you all. We'll try to move this along. I'm gonna add a little bit to the introduction of the panelists. I'm going to just raise a few planning-related housing issues, I think, that apply to the county and specifically to the Arlington area. And then most of the time I'll let these folks make some comments and facilitate a discussion with all of you. So, yeah, first of all, my name is Jim Sullivan. I'm the director of the Bennington County Regional Commission. Have been there for a very long time. Let's leave it at that. And but maybe more importantly, I lived in Arlington for 20 years, and it was really it was after I moved to the area to take a job in Manchester. I was looking for a place to live, and from my own perspective, that I really wanted to live in Arlington. I wanted to live in Arlington because it was a nice, compact, friendly community, an absolutely beautiful natural environment, and as been mentioned, had a really outstanding and for me an understandable school system. You know, I was like, wow, there's the schools, K through 12, and so we raised our 2 kids here, right over through the woods over there, and I think all those attributes and assets that Arlington had then that attracted me to the community are still here. And you know, I think that it's great that you guys are here because it's a big issue to figure out how to bring more people in. So Allie Shoring here, she was raised in Sandgate, went off to Linden State College, got her degree, moved away like a lot of young folks do, like my own kids did, and then moved back to the area, and now is you know, working a job or 2, you know, involved in the community and facing the challenges that I know my kids face and you face, including trying to find suitable housing. Ron Weber is a longtime Arlington resident, has been involved in a lot of boards and commissions in the community, very active community member, has run some businesses with his wife in the community, and before that, really literally traveled around the world in his previous jobs, so I think there's a lot of experience from other areas that he can bring to light. And Stephanie, as you just met, is the executive director of Shires Housing. I'm fortunate enough to be on the board, and I can tell you Stephanie does a great job helping us manage a growing portfolio of properties from Bennington to Manchester, including the properties in Arlington that were referred to, and also developing new properties, new projects, and I think she could provide some great insights on the type of housing development that might work well here in Arlington. So just a few things that I want to say. First of all, the Regional Planning Commission is involved in all manner of issues and topics around community planning and development. We try to stay on top of what the real needs and interests are in the communities around the regions. Recently, just a few months ago, we did a survey of all of our towns and commissioners about what their most pressing needs were. And there were a lot of them, but number 1 by a long ways across the region was housing. So you guys are focusing on a topic that is important and also a shared concern throughout all of our region and indeed throughout all the state. The issues vary a little bit around the state, although there's a lot of shared interest. In Manchester, for example, you know, no surprising, there's some issue with affordability of housing, a provision of housing for a workforce. You know, they're also a job center, and a lot of folks from Manchester commute from quite a distance, and also you know, just the location of housing in Manchester. There's actually very little housing in the center of Manchester, where all the activity is. So they're taking some actions to try to address that in Manchester. In Bennington, you know, another issue is equality in the location of housing in Bennington. You know, a lot of people who move to the area, professionals, young professionals, they may be able to find housing. It's not of the quality that they would like if it's in the place they want, or it's you know, it's not in the location that they want. So a lot of folks are looking for, you know, a nice either rental or ownership property in the center of town, and it's very limited. You know, Pownell, for example, you know, we talked about Pownell. They have some assets like the sewer system. they also have a lot of concerns with substandard housing, and they're trying to address that. They're talking about building codes and health inspections and everything else. It's been a long-standing issue in Conway. So there's issues everywhere, and in this area, in Arlington and Sunderland and Sandgate, the issues are significant, a little bit different and a little bit different across all three towns. Arlington and Sunderland in particular is, I think, is maybe the issue that's motivating this session is a real job center. I looked up yesterday, I think there's 1,100 plus jobs in Arlington and several hundred in Sunderland, which is a lot of jobs relative to the population of the communities. And yet, a significant majority of those employees do commute into the area. The average commute time is over 20 minutes, and I think about a third of the commuters commute over half an hour. So given the potential quality of life that's available here, it's really unfortunate that those more of those employees can't live in and contribute to the community more directly. Some of the issues that kind of pop out, and I would suggest there's some great housing stuff in the handout, and I'm showing up here some data, but there's also a great website, housingdata.org, that's maintained, I think, by the Vermont Housing Finance. Has some great information and graphics that summarize a lot of the housing information for community by community. So the cost of new construction was pointed out. That's obviously a very big issue, a very significant issue. Interestingly, rental costs in Arlington I noticed were significantly higher than the state average. Another issue that's been alluded to is the age of the housing stock. While in Sunderland it's relatively newer, in Arlington it's significantly older than the statewide average, which suggests that a lot of the housing, as has been pointed out, might need some work. And generally, the type and location of housing, the availability of housing, is an issue. And to that point, in the table discussion that our group had, one of the things that more and more we find in our business that people want in the community development world for where they want to live. They really want to live. Not everybody. People want to live all over, and that's good. But a lot of people really want kind of we call it a walkable community. They want to live in village centers where it's fairly easy to get to services, to stores, to businesses, and the more folks we have living in those walkable village centers, the more momentum and energy there is for business development and entrepreneurship in those areas, and it really helps those places grow and become vibrant and vital and attract more people to the area. So to do that, you need to be able to do a little higher density housing, and you need to accommodate mixed uses. So maybe stores with apartments above them, or offices, or any restaurants and coffee shops, things like that. All types of things that require, among other things, but very importantly, some ability to handle wastewater treatment, as Don discussed. It's a huge issue. It's been an issue for a long time in Arlington. There was a study done, I think Keith might be the only one other than me that remembers it, right, in the late 70s, early 80s, I think, a comprehensive study of wastewater solutions for Arlington. And then there was a more recent study that was specifically in East Arlington. But it's been an issue. It's been a challenge for a long time, and it still is. And I talked with the folks at the state who oversee a program that's specifically designed to help towns study options for wastewater treatment. I spoke with her yesterday, and she was aware of that both of those earlier studies, having worked on the second one herself, and encouraged the town to look at following up and pursuing a new one. I have details on that we can talk about. So I think that there's other opportunities for grants and funding, but I think that's a good starting point. So that's all I wanted to say from the planning perspective, and then let me just turn it over to Allie first, maybe, for some comments.
Sure, yeah. Allie Shorin, local young person, I guess. So as it was said, I was born in Bennington, grew up in Sandgate, lived in the area my entire life, moved away for college up in Linden, northern Vermont. Then actually upon graduation in 2015, moved out to California, stayed there for about 6 months and just missed my family and missed the area, and just I could not fathom being that far away from my family. So I moved back to Vermont. I originally moved back up to Lyndonville. The housing up there is considerably more affordable. I was looking at $300 to $400 a month, including all utilities. That might have been with a boyfriend or a friend, but it was still affordable. And down here, I quickly learned that even if you were looking with someone else, you're looking at $600 a month, and that does not include any utilities. So reason I moved back down here was because there was a lack of jobs up in Lyndonville. I was working at a cafe where 32 hours a week was full-time, and they were paying me $7 an hour. So I quickly was like, can't pay my student loans on this. So moved back down. I was very, very lucky to be able to move in with a family member who charges me dirt cheap rent. I live in a bedroom the size of a closet. I literally only have room for my bed and my belongings, and that's it. So that was meant to be a temporary situation while I looked for housing, and here we are almost 3 years later, and I am still unable to find housing. So I originally looked at renting. There was a lot of rental properties in the area, but they were too expensive because I'm a single 26-year-old paying student loans, car, everything. So looking at more than $1,000 a month for me was completely unfeasible. That's like half of what I make every month. So it was just impossible. And so then I kind of started entertaining the idea of buying a house. And that was, maybe the monthly payments would have been a little bit more affordable, but then you also have to factor in utilities and upkeep. And so then I started looking at getting a third job. And then I kind of was doing some kind of thinking about, well, if I'm working, over 70 hours a week and to afford this house, I'm not going to be there to enjoy it. And I also have a dog, so that is, rental properties immediately go down very much when you have an animal. I know personally, me and all of my friends, we all have animals. They mean a lot to me. I even entertained the idea of giving up my animal, but mentally I just couldn't handle it. So the financial burden of him was more than worth the emotional support that I got. So just all of these factors, too many bills, no one else around here that I can find, that I can have as a roommate. My dog, a lot of people just not allowing animals in their apartments. It's just kind of the perfect storm of housing is just impossible for me to find in this area. So, yeah, that's my story.
So I thank you, and I think you're certainly not unique. That's an interesting story, and thank you for bringing the perspective. I'm sure people have questions, but let's get everybody a chance to talk, and then we'll take questions. So I'll jump over to Ron.
I'm Ron Weber. My wife and I moved here actually from Scotland. We were on an overseas assignment from a company out of California where we lived before going to Scotland. And we moved here because I worked for the petroleum industry. Things were going downhill in the mid-80s, 87. And my wife wanted to do a bed and breakfast in the area. A friend of hers had showed her an article that Vermont housing was still affordable, at that time, but would not be for very long. So that's when Ann went looking for a property up here and found the Norman Rockwell house in West Arlington at that time. And we bought it. I did not see it before we bought it, but her past experience with properties, I said, go ahead. So that got us here from California to Scotland, and haven't looked back since then. And we operated 3 different bed and breakfasts and inns over the past 25 years. And so we've met a lot of people from out of state and even from out of the country. And over those years, there's probably been more than a dozen people that have eventually retired and have come here, come back looking for properties and retired and have moved to the area. And also our children who were grown, or almost at the time we moved here in 1987, were in California, and we were here operating the bed and breakfast. And over the summer times, they would come sometimes, if they were still in college, to help operate the bed and breakfast and what have you. And they liked the area, and over the 10 years or so, they all ended up moving here to Vermont. We have 2 of them chose Sunderland and Sandgate because of the school choice issue. The other one lived here in Arlington and has since moved to Manchester. So, and the fourth person is living near Burlington because of the work that he is involved in the health center up there. I was going to also mention about people coming to the area and seeing it and liking it and then moving here. Our spouses of our children's families have come to visit them in the area, and there's been now at least 10 households from California that existing in the area that moved here because we came here 32 years ago. And so there's been lots of, they came, saw what they liked, and decided that that was a better life for them. Probably especially the people from Southern California with cost of living and things like that. We have also owned 2 rental houses in the area for the better part of 15 years. And we also had a holiday, short-term rental holiday cottage in Manchester Center that we operated for 9 years. We talked about the price of housing in the area, and I wanted to bring up the 2008 downturn in the economic downturn at that time and all over the country, and especially here. It has not really recovered that much, in my estimation, until more recently with regards to housing prices. And that I'm definitely aware of that because we have a house that we purchased in 2007 on 313, and it's been used as a rental property since then. And we're putting it on the market, and it's definitely going to be a loss. There's no way we can, well, we recovered part of the thing because of being a rental property, but no way to get that price back, that it has just not come back up to that level. The issue about a significant number of properties in the area that are in disrepair, what have you. I think for the main part, people who bought the houses prior to the 2008 turn down are just trying to probably now selling the property and just to get their money back, and putting any kind of money into repairs or what have you, they would just not see any return on that. So I think that's a part of the reason for some of the distressed properties. And it seems like, talking with some people, it seems like today's buyers are looking for ready-to-move-in properties and either not interested in looking for any to do repairs on, or they put all the money into a down payment for the property and just don't have any funds to fix things up. Looking at issues are where we could get more affordable houses in the area. I went online and looked at most of the towns I looked at were much larger than Arlington, like Brattleboro, Springfield, Saxton's River, Ludlow, Bellows Falls. And I think most of these properties that I looked at were affordable housing properties. And all of them, or a lot of them were like from 15 to 28 units. And I think if we wanted to look at doing something like that in this area, especially in Arlington, it would again be the sewer, the wastewater system would be a drawback, as I think for that size of the property, if it's all in one structure or maybe attached units, that it would be uneconomical operating it with their own, having to install their own septic system. Earlier, Faith Rhodes has brought up the issue about the cell service and was talked about quite a bit as well. Ann and I are retired back to West Arlington, where we had our first in there, and are greatly aware of the lack of cell service. And we do have internet service, but do not have cable where we live on River Road. So that's a big issue that needs, because a lot of people have pointed out that definitely needs attention in the Arlington area, is better, more cell service, especially in West Arlington and in other places. And with regards to the fiber optic internet accessibility. If my last comment would be, at the same time of looking to improve things in the area, more people in the area, you have community members that would like to keep the area more rural and not jerseyed up, as some people would say. So that's all I have.
Thank you. So thanks, Sally and Ron. Pointed out a lot of the issues and problems and concerns, and I saved Stephanie for last because she's going to solve them all.
So I'm Stephanie Lane. I'm the Executive Director of Shires Housing. And unlike Allie and Ron, I don't live in Arlington, but we provide homes to 37 households in Arlington. So Shires Housing owns and manages 37 units in this town, primarily historic properties that we've rehabbed, including Central Lane. 12 units were newly constructed and the balance were rehabbed cottages. And then 4 on Route 313, 409, 431, Route 313 are ours as well. And they just underwent a rehab thanks to our state partners. And we completed that in the summer. So both are quality housing, affordable housing. And I like to think of Arlington as 15 roofs. So we have 37 units and 15 roofs that we maintain. Just the nature of the housing stock makes it really challenging. They're aging properties, and we have, of course, reserve balances for looking at, how do we address the needs of these properties in the long term. We have ongoing capital needs assessments that we do every 5 years for these properties. But for your typical homeowner, that's going to be a tough ask. And to go into a property such as, the ones that we're looking at, which are older housing stock, and asking them to be able to do that, the kind of rehab that we do at that level, and energy efficiency upgrades, is an awful lot for someone to undertake unless they have access to resources like we do. So, we're able to provide housing that's healthy, that's quality, that's energy efficient to families here at an affordable rate. And, we think that's really important work. And, just to throw some statistics out there for the conversation, 30% of homeowners and 35% of renters in the county pay more than 35% of their monthly income to Ally's on housing. So that's not sustainable. And if you couple that with substandard housing as well, that's the perfect storm for a family. Unfortunately, if they can't maintain it, we're asking them, to move in, to purchase, and for them to be able to maintain that level of quality for their family is really difficult and pretty expensive and kind of a daunting task, I would think, for a young family moving through the area. And thinking about tools to attract folks to Arlington. I mean, I know there's a lot of important work going on here in terms of events and making this more of a destination for people so that they want to come here. There are definitely jobs here for such a small town. There are a lot of jobs, but how do we support the employees of these large employers and encourage them to stay in this area? And how do we provide housing that's sustainable to them? It may be affordable initially, but how do they maintain it over the long term? How do they heat it? Your house payment may be within reach, but then if you're spending, 10% on oil of your monthly income as well, how do you maintain that and feed your family and take care of school clothes and all of the other things that you need? So I think, there are important tools that a town can enlist, such as zoning and density bonuses and things like that, to attract investment and to attract new construction, or even rehab of existing, which seems appropriate here in Arlington more so than new perhaps. But there's the issue of the infrastructure before you get to that point. And I know our Central Lane property has ongoing septic issues and has for years, and is always a challenge for us. And knowing if we were moving a family of 4 into one of the cottages, we know this is going to be an issue, and that maintenance is going to get more calls, and we're going to be paying more visits and clogging. And they have such glamorous jobs, but this is part of what we do daily. But we're committed. This is an important place to us, and we're committed to making it work here and to providing housing for families that makes sense. So, Shires has been in business for 30 years, and Arlington has been part of that for 30 years. And we'd love to hopefully embark on additional investment here, continue to maintain what we have, but also look at future projects. So we're really pleased to be part of the discussion and hopefully, some of the solution for this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, everybody. And so if people have questions, we have a few minutes left. 5. I'm going to take 6 or 7 because we got shortchanged together. But if you have questions for a particular person, just ask them, or if it's a general question or comment, I will entertain it. Yeah, Don.
Stephanie, you're doing a project at Lake Parent.
We are, yes.
I believe it's a 22-unit development.
It is.
And am I right in saying that the cost of that, the total cost to you, all in, makes the unit cost something like $340,000.
The hard construction per unit cost is about $175 per unit. Site work adds more to that. It's a challenging site. The topography of the site on the western side is pretty challenging, so that has added some cost to the project, absolutely. But the hard construction costs are about $175.
But, when the developer, you take hard costs and soft costs, I mean, they're part of the cost.
Yes, absolutely.
You're spending about $21 million, is that?
No, we're spending $7.1 million.
Oh, I'm sorry,
on
seven.
that project.
For 22 units, it comes close to 300,000. And I'm just, there was a question back here about why rentals are so costly. I mean, you're experiencing this, and
We are, absolutely.
if we can get it down to $150 per house, I mean, you're at over 300,000. It sounds like it's almost impossible to build rental housing today.
It's quite costly, and it's not going in the right direction. There's definitely a challenge in terms of subcontractors locally, and that driving the cost up as well. We're in competition with ourselves in some cases. I had a project in Manchester. I was building condominiums, for sale condos in the springtime, and also building the Monument View project in Bennington, which is a 24-unit rental project, new construction. And we were literally pulling subs back and forth between the projects and making tough choices about, who needed them more that day, who needed the roofers more, And being able to keep the cost down is something that we're looking at very carefully, because we have a lot of soft costs. We have to have a lot of expertise on board when we do these projects. We're held to a very high standard in terms of construction, in terms of regulation. The per unit cost also includes reserves, which we put aside at onset for those properties. So there's a lot that goes into that. But certainly the cost of materials and subcontractors is not helping, and the competition for those and for skilled labor is a big issue for us. So yes, it's a costly endeavor, and it continues to be. And we're working on strategies statewide with our partners to figure out how to address that and to reverse this trend.
And yet you have subsidized rents, right? I mean, to have over $300,000 for the cost, the rent has to be astronomical.
No.
But in your case, it's not.
It's not, and we have access to some resources that don't require hard debt. We always have debt on our projects, almost always. We have some sort of debt on the project that we're responsible to pay, but primarily the rents go back into the property. The rent levels are under market rate. They are not subsidized by Section 8 in this case. All 22 units will be affordable to households who have to have some income. So between 22,000 to say a range of 86,000 for a family of four, because we have some housing revenue bond funds in that project, which allows more of a mixed income strategy and more of a mixed income community. So there are some rents as high as $1,080 in that project, and there are rents as low as $585. So it's quite a range.
Yeah, the back. Yep.
I have a question regarding your Center Hill 12 unit in Arlington. I have three questions. What type of septic systems service those rentals? Number two is, do you have a plan B in case those fail? Because I'm familiar with what the regulation is. And then my third question would be, would you welcome public sewer to the village?
I will wrap up all three with a yes on number three. Yes, we would welcome the sewer, absolutely. For us, it would be worth the cost because we're investing in that property and the ongoing repairs and pumping out the septic. So absolutely, we would support public sewer. I have to be careful because I know folks live here and would have to share in that cost, but we would certainly pay our fair share of that cost. Plan B is we have reserves, and that's what the reserves are for. In a case where we have to do some renovation, this is what the reserves are for. We put aside a certain amount per unit per month for every property to address their ongoing needs and for long term, and we plan for 20 years. And that's part of our cost to these projects, is planning for the future. We maintain these for 20 to 30 years, you know, in perpetuity is really what we're required to do. And so we have to plan accordingly. We can't plan for a property that, you know, we get a 20-year lifespan out of, you know, we sell it. That's not how it works. It's ours for the long haul, and we have to care for it the long haul. So how it's constructed initially and how it's maintained are important, and yes, there's some additional investment involved with that, but to be able to maintain a property and keep it as quality, decent, safe housing for folks requires that kind of investment.
So I'm just curious, what type of system services those 12 units? Is it a commercial size? Is it a shared leach field? Do they all have their own individual?
There are a couple of individual and a shared leach field up there, so it's something that we keep an eye on carefully.
Let's take
Absolutely.
one more question. Jonathan?
My question is for Ellie about the Arlington Professionals. About how many members live in Arlington or work in Arlington? How many live outside Arlington or work in Arlington? I'd like to learn more about that group and how that's going.
So that's going to be really hard to tell you. Our meetings are a little bit sporadic. We don't really have like a set first Tuesday of every month, like the Renewal Project has. And also our very first meeting when we unveiled and kind of inauguration of this group, we had, I think, over 30 people. And then the subsequent meetings were probably the most, at most, like 10 or 12. So the initial interest was very big and awesome, and then it kind of, I haven't seen a lot of those people from the first meeting again. But I feel like a good amount of them probably do live in Sandgate and Sunderland, and I think maybe if I wanted to absolutely just an estimate, probably say like 40 to 50% probably live in Arlington, maybe. I do know like there's one couple that was really frequent that lives right on 7A, and she worked in Manchester, and he, I think, was a drive around kind of working person.
It's been really neat to have a bunch of different folks showing up to the meetings. Last month, we had a couple actually from Greenwich, New York, who both work at BDA and are looking to live in Arlington. And so that's been really neat to have folks who work and live in different communities but want to be a part of the Arlington community. So they're actually looking to build in town and have struggled to find land. They want to have a smaller footprint, but they can't afford to live in Manchester where they work. So that's why they purchased in Greenwich about 3 years ago. But it's been a really neat kind of transient group of folks where it's like in and out the door, revolving questions, concerns that they have. So it's a really great opportunity for people.
Arlington buyers.
Exactly, yeah.
Great, well, thank you very much. I see we're definitely out of time now, so thank you.